Happy Sunday and welcome back into the Pig Trail Show. It's time for another Hog Hoops report. That's Kevin McPherson. I'm Jacob Morris. And Kevin, a lot to talk about this week, but we start in the recruiting ranks, specifically with some 2025 guys. What are you hearing? Cal's active as we knew he'd be. He's doing what he does best, which is recruiting at a high level.
Recruiting at a high level. And I think Arkansas, I don't know when it'll be, but I think Arkansas is in the driver's seat. I've been talking about it the last week or so. Not in the clubhouse yet, but on the, atop the leaderboard for Darius Acuff Jr., class of 2025, national number 4 overall prospect, according to 247 Sports. So we know that's not only 5-star territory. That this is, you've got a case if you're a top 5 guy. I'm the best player in the country. Took a visit to Arkansas, the first visitor when you look at high school recruiting to make it to campus back in early May. And so, this is a young man that's been dominant on the Nike EYBL circuit, 6'3" guard out of IMG Academy by way of Detroit. And I think there's definitely momentum for Arkansas to be the team that gets him. It's a matter now of timing. Does he pull the trigger sometime in July? Most players are going to be very busy throughout the month. It's a dead period for on-campus visits. Like I said, he's already been to Arkansas, recently visited UConn, but he's not going to visit anywhere else at least this month. And then you pay attention a little bit to August to see if some of these higher rated guys drag things out. Do they take more visits with him? I really think it's down to Arkansas, probably Kansas, Michigan. Again, he visited UConn. Those are his final 4. He's visited all 4 of those schools, but that recent visit to UConn, to me, this isn't just a decision in a vacuum. You look at some other level, top 10 5-star guys in the backcourt. Malik Thomas, who may be a strong lean to UConn, where he recently visited right before postponing his visit to Arkansas. And then Darren Patterson, who recently visited Kansas. He's also a top 5 rated 5-star guard who is more of a shooting guard, but his dad's been telling me even the last few days that he's going to be a scoring point guard at the next level, big 6'4" guard, maybe Kansas in the driver's seat. So to me, it's not just about the fact that Arkansas is the preference for Acuff, but when you start talking about NIL battles or looking at what other teams might be putting together on their roster, a lot of these top shelf guys that play similar positions aren't looking to split time and maybe, kind of fall into the shadows behind someone else. It's not that they're afraid of competition. It's just, sometimes these things are strategic. So I said all that to say there are multiple reasons why I think Darius Acuff Jr. has Arkansas in front right now. It may even be a situation, I don't know this, there's already a private commitment. I don't know that. And I'm not even speculating that's the case. I bring it up as a possibility because that's how strongly I feel based on my own source information, plus some other recruiting analysts that I talked to that are also getting source information that Arkansas is in the driver's seat. Now we just wonder what's the time frame, because nobody seems to know that in terms of an announcement. And again, this is where things stand right now. Recruiting fluctuates, it can change. But another class of 2025 player, Caleb Wilson, a 6'9" combo forward out of the Atlanta area, plays also on the Nike EYBL circuit. I had a source tell me, I think it was back in May, I think it was even early to mid-May, so almost 2 months, that Arkansas would be in his top group of schools that he'd planned to visit. And Adam Zagoria, a national college basketball recruiting analyst, just put out within the last 48 hours a short list of schools that Wilson's likely to visit. Arkansas was among them. So it lines up what I heard weeks ago. It's been a little bit quiet on that front in terms of not really anything changing or updating. So I don't know how much of an update it is, but it's what I expected based on what I heard a while ago. So another top 5 rated guy. When you look at the composite rankings, he's the 4th rated national player in that class of 2025. So another guy that says, look, maybe I'm the best player in all of high school basketball. When you look at, I saw a breakdown recently, and Wilson was in the top 5 or 6 players, regardless of class, in terms of rankings. And so both of these guys check boxes. We'll see if Arkansas does get a visit. Zagoria reported a little more specifics that maybe in the fall is when some of these visits would happen. So we got a ways to go there. But, with the way Calipari recruits, he's going to target what used to be 6 or 7 high school guys. He's saying now 3 or 4. He has a good track record of getting guys even at that level to sign early, but then sometimes it's later. That was the case with Carter Knox and Billy Richmond when he was still the coach of Kentucky. Those guys didn't commit until March. Of course, he moves to Arkansas, and both of them followed him. But So there's a mix of get them early and maybe some that you know push out a little later. But I do wonder, kind of out loud, as this process changes for him, drilling down, cutting in half how many high school guys he's targeting. Does he then have a plan to say, okay, if I'm going to cut it that short, I don't need to be waiting around on guys in the spring when I'm focused on the portal, because he's going to put more of a focus on that going forward. Maybe he convinces guys to get on board now and get on board early for that mid-November period. But outside of A Cup Junior, things could be, I was told Caleb Wilson, going back to him, really likes Calipari and likes the idea of playing with him in Arkansas. Doesn't mean Arkansas is going to get him, but if he's talking about visiting, and I've been hearing that for a while, and it was kind of reinforced just recently, I think that could bode well moving forward.
Yeah, it should be interesting to watch. I was kind of perusing social media as you do, and it was funny with Acuff, Wilson, and a couple other guys. I was seeing a couple Arkansas fans saying, man, UConn, Kansas, it's going to be hard to beat those. And they were kind of looking at it as a negative, but you've alluded to it before in past weeks. This is welcome to the John Calipari experience, right? This is actually a positive that you're targeting guys that UConn, that Kansas, that Michigan, that everybody else wants, right? These are the battles that Calipari is going to take on and that Arkansas is hoping and is confident that he can win. It's a good sign ultimately. It's not just a bad sign that you got to go up against the Blue Bloods.
Jacob, but Calipari is a blue blood.
Yeah.
In of himself, he's on an island. He's the greatest recruiter of all time. I say it. He was an innovator in recruiting. It wasn't just about getting high-level guys. It was the plan he had for them. And all you have to do is look at how many guys he turns out to the NBA. How many of them are high draft picks? How many of them are getting max deals right now? He identifies superior talent. He develops them. People have laughed about that because they already come in, a lot of them, with one and done projections. But that doesn't mean it always plays out. With his guys, it typically does. They go higher. They get picked higher maybe than they would if they'd been somewhere else. And then as they develop at the NBA level, many of these guys are marquee players. So he's got just a shelf of riches to point to when he's recruiting guys. So to me, the question marks about postseasons are the only ones that are legitimate for the last 5 years. When you look at the arc and the body of work, I just wrote an extensive piece. It's on Pig Trail Nation on KUWA. It's also in Hogville about the biggest news may not be the fact that he went from blue blood Kentucky after 15 years to Arkansas. It may be bigger news that he's realigning, making adjustments to how he's going to put together, this top shelf recruiting. It's not going to be so half your roster heavy, according to him, and it wasn't in this last class with what he brought with him, just on high school 5-star guys. And so having said all that, when he recruits whatever level, he's got all the results to point to and say, here's why you need to play for me. So look, Arkansas, you're going up against UConn. You're going up against Kansas, North Carolina, Duke, some of these schools. Calipari is going to continue to win those kind of battles. And look, this first roster, he stopped it at 9 deep. Part of the nuance of his new path forward is not only less of a focus on the high school guys, but keeping it to 8 or 9 guys that are actually got a shot at playing. We've seen with the backfield and these 10, 11, and 12 players, he put his money where his mouth is. He's sticking true to the plan. Part of what I wrote in the article. So to me, this tells me this is a guy that's not just not taking a run out at 65 years old to get some big paydays and just kind of keep things exactly the same and see what happens. Here's a guy that's making adjustments on the fly. How many coaches with all his level of success are going to be stubborn and say, this is who I am? Yeah, you don't completely wander away from who you are, but he's making tweaks and adjustments. Let's see how it plays on the court. Don't forget, aside from March Madness struggles in the last 5 years, really he's been pretty damn good, excuse my language, in the regular season. His teams have been really solid with a very few exceptions in the last 15 years at Kentucky. So I think that's what you do pay attention to. Ultimately, fans remember what you do in March. But Arkansas is going to win its share of recruiting battles under Calipari and have some really strong seasons and big games. And we know Eric Musselman moved a needle. I think Calipari moves it even more.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head from the standpoint. It all ties together, right? You never know. March Madness it's fun because of its random nature, but the hypothesis from folks in Lexington and talking heads everywhere, right, is that a lot of the struggles came from the standpoint that all of a sudden Cal's team of 18-year-olds was going up against really experienced rosters. So it's a great point by you in terms of he might be 65, he might have every accolade in the book, but him being willing to adjust is really encouraging. But hey, let's go to the next rank, the Pro Hogs, where Calipari, I'm sure, is soon going to add to the number of Pro Hogs in the NBA. But Summer League getting underway, and I know you want to talk about the California Classic a little bit. 2 Pro Hogs active there in day 1 of Summer League and getting off on the right foot.
Yeah, I mean, you've got basically the next 2+ weeks of NBA Summer League. The regular season just ended. I'm a junkie. I start getting, things start getting weird around me when basketball season is over, but it's never really over. There's always something going on, and then Summer League gives you some competitive stuff, and it's televised nationally. All the games are, and you had Mason Jones, going to be a 5th-year pro. He's kind of been on multiple two-way deals. Had a few games. He's played 30+ games, I think, getting close to it in the NBA, most of it G League stuff, a little bit overseas. But Mason Jones, man, last night, Sacramento Kings playing China's national team, doubled him up 101-50. He was the player of the game, 19 points, 5 of 8 from 3, made all 4 of his free throws, also a game high, 5 assists, 4 rebounds. And they talked about during the broadcast how he's lost 40 pounds since April. I mean, I don't know how you do that. That sounds a little bit dicey, but you looked at the guy, he's about as lean as I've seen him. He looked quicker than normal, than the typical Mason Jones. And look, he's a very talented guy. I think the biggest thing for him is he was such an alpha scorer in college, and not everybody that did that at the highest level at Arkansas in the SEC, not everybody that does that, will that translate to the next level. You've got to bring more to the table. You've got to be willing to dial that down a little bit and be more of a team-centric player, find other ways to help. And I think that's been for an alpha guy like him that has this supreme confidence. It has been a bit of a challenge. So I think he's talented enough to be and stick on a roster in the NBA. And you see a game last night. Yeah, it was a China national team, but man, he was really good. He made really good plays. Did not look to score early in the game. Looked to get his teammates involved. Did a good job of distributing the ball. Look, those 5 assists could have been easily been 10, 11, and 12. I saw some guys just getting, after being off watching the finals and the playoffs that weren't in there, Sacramento didn't make it. Some of those guys may be a little rusty, off a little bit on their shooting, but Jones had an outstanding floor game. And then Nick Smith Jr., rookie last season, led the NBA all rookies in 3-point field goal percentage at over 43%. He and Jason Tatum, who just won a title with NBA, the only 2 players in NBA history at 19 years old or younger to shoot at least 43% from 3 on at least 125+ attempts in the regular season in a single year. So it's a pretty big deal how good Nick Smith Jr. was from distance. 10 games last season, scoring in double figures, career high in the season finale on the road against Cleveland in a 10-point win, 24 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. That was a Cleveland team, is not only a playoff team, but needed to win.
Yeah.
That final day to improve its seed. So it wasn't like, they were thrown in the towel to the Charlotte Hornets, who weren't very good, but Nick had a big game. But last night, Summer League debut in the California Classic, the Hornets destroyed the San Antonio Spurs by a good margin, and Nick started 10 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists in that game, 7 rebounds, 10 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists in about 22, 23 minutes. So a good floor game for him. Hit a deep 3 from a logo, made its way around social media. So off to a good start. By the way, these guys, unless they rest for any reason today, will be playing again today. When you look at NBA Summer League, it's every day. We know NBA games in the regular season are daily, but pretty much in these next 2 to 3 weeks, guys are almost playing daily that are taking part in this. There's other Pro Hogs going to be involved. When you look around, guys that are expected to be involved in this, the other 3 rookies, from last year, Jordan Walsh, Anthony Black, Ricky Council the fourth, all 3 of those guys are expected to play. Jimmy Witt Jr. is on the Golden State's roster. The Warriors played yesterday. He did not play in that game. Stanley Amude, now with the Milwaukee Bucks on a 2-year deal. If Milwaukee's got Bobby Portis, we'll see what happens with Patrick Beverly. I haven't been paying attention, but there's a potential to have 3 Pro Hogs on the same team. And Milwaukee, historically, going back to Sidney Moncrief, when they drafted him 5th overall back in 1979, has just they love former Razorbacks. Alvin Robertson, Andrew Lang, Todd Day, Lee Mayberry, the 2 players they drafted in the same first round in '92. But the list goes on and on. of Pro Hogs that have gone through Milwaukee. So we'll see there. But it's always exciting to talk about the Pro Hogs. Got one more to talk about Isaiah Joe on his new deal. Uh, so kind of transitioning to that, we reported already not that long ago, Jacob, that he agreed to the deal. But today, this afternoon, actually, right before we've come on, he signed that deal. And I've got a breakdown of it. It was reported I reported last week that it was a 4-year, $48 million deal. We've got more details now on those numbers as it breaks down annually over the next 4 years. But he's going to make more than half of that, over 25 million in the first 2 years of the deal. Every year is guaranteed. The first three, all four of them are fully guaranteed. The first three, no brainer. Year 4 is a team option. Every bit of it's guaranteed if the team opts to it. If they waive the option, then they can re-sign him or he'll be a free agent. But there are no partial guarantees in any of the 4 years. It adds up to 48 million. But I mentioned the first 2 years he'll make more than half of that, over 25 million. Nearly 13, just a hair under 13 million in year 1, 12.3 million in year 2. So just over 25 million there. And then when you get into the next 2 seasons, he makes just over 11 million in each of those years 3 and 4. And again, year 4 is a team option, but there are no partial guarantees in there. So it's a really good deal for him. Look, here's a guy that his first 4 years in the league, 2 in Philadelphia and 2 in Oklahoma City, total just over 6 million, almost 6.5 million. So he's gonna more than double that in year 1. That's a pretty good deal for Isaiah Joe, who's earned it. One of the best shooters in the NBA. Really has broken out in his 2 years in Oklahoma City. Last year, 18th in the league and 3-point percentage at 41.6%. His per minute volume's insane. He's an elite 3-point shooter and floor gravity spacer for teammates. And then defensively, I always said going back to when he was in high school, he is an underrated defender and athlete. And he continues to prove that. It's a really good two-way player. Less is more with him. He's just a great teammate. It's not about him, it's about the team. So it's good to see him be rewarded. And by the way, watching these cut-ups from practice that are now starting to flow like wine after kind of being quiet. We talked about a couple of them that came out a week ago. Man, it's almost daily now coming out of Arkansas practice, and you're seeing multiple future pros. We talk about pro hogs. You're watching them when you see these clips. Man, I'm amazed. It was one of the last ones I just watched. Big Z takes it down the pipe and, kind of ice cream cone, snow coned it into the rim. I'm like, dude, that's a 7'2" dude putting it on the deck and getting by guys. A lot of good stuff to see from everybody that's appearing in these cut-ups, from Nelly Davis, Boogie Flan, Carter Knox, Jonas Adu, Trevor Brazil, Adu Thero. All these guys look really good putting it together. So far, what we see emerging from practice is I think John Calipari is going to have not only has a strong roster, that's a given, he's going to have a strong first season at Arkansas.
Yeah, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. I remember you saying you were kind of fiending. We need some content, right, to come out of practice. And not only was it the highlights, but man, I loved they had the little soundbite from Calipari, and it kind of gave me chills. He was sitting there, he was saying, you guys knew what you signed up for. If you're not ready for it, you're not going to play much here. And that just got me ready for basketball season. You see why the type of caliber player he brings in, and you see the type of caliber coach he is. It's great that we're finally getting content. It gets the blood kind of boiling and ready for basketball season.
Yeah, it's you've got multiple McDonald's All-Americans, former McDonald's All-Americans. You've got Nelly Davis, co-player of the year in his league last year. Jonas Adu, all SEC, all defensive team. Trevor Brazil, with all his problems with injuries and consistency, was a first-team preseason All-SEC pick last year. A guy that the NBA scouts were drooling over and had him as a lottery projection before continued issue. There's potential first-round picks up and down this 9-man roster. And I know, we've added 10 and 11 and 12. That helps them get through 5-on-5. To me, again, looking at it with his new plan, I don't have a lot of arguments with it. I think if you were nitpicking, you'd say maybe a little more beef on the front line, maybe a more, higher level guy that could get on the perimeter and shoot, knock down some shots. Maybe some Kamani Johnson or some guys that are that have a little more potential to give you impact for whatever reasons, any kind of attrition, or you just need to make a statement because your top 9 guys aren't necessarily getting it done. I don't think he quite has that, but barring injuries and some major rash of problems, this looks like a very well put together roster. 1 through 9, it's hard to argue with it.
Yeah, he flashed the roster building right away. And again, we talked about it time and time again. But for all the people that were kind of pushing the pace, saying, when is everything going to come together? He works at his own pace, and it's been pretty darn good. Anything else you want to hit before we go, Kevin?
Not really. I mean, we're summer league. I'm
Yeah.
geeked up for
Yeah.
games today. Glad they're all televised. It's just going to carry us through, and we'll keep an eye on that 2025 recruiting. Let's see if something falls into place sooner rather than later.
Yeah, absolutely. Should be a lot of fun to watch. That's going to do it for this week's Hog Hoops Report. That's Kevin McPherson. I'm Jacob Morris. We'll talk to you next week.